Chapter 2. Aaron. The city of Sulander was set to the south-southwest of the land known as Sudraheim, an ornate gem that shone like an emerald in the crisp autumn frost. The beautiful city, which had been known throughout the ages by many names but roughly translated to mean the Southern Grove, dominated the southern landscape with its artisan-crafted stone, quarried from the Suderds to the north, and towers of ivory white and ornate copper. The three walls, fashioned in concentric rings, and the three spires that made up Sulander were well laid and crested with copper that over long years and poor upkeep had tarnished and turned green, earning the southern city the name, the Emerald City. The white, almost iridescent stone of the Emerald City mirrored the tarnished copper which, even on a moonless night, would cause the city to glow with a pale greenish-yellow light. It was the kind of light that mist embodied. It was a faint glow that was said to have an effect on all those encompassed by it. The city opened to the south, which pinned those who entered between the great southern sea and the walls of the outer ring. The first of the great spires was found in the outermost ring on the western side, the Emerald Prison. There was much speculation as to why an architect would build such a tower to house the convicted and place it in the ring that was home to the lower classes. Many thought it was poor planning, age, and ergot, working hard on an already fragile mind. For if a riot were to ever ensue, the first tower breached would be the prison. Atop the tower, which beveled to a circular plateau, could be found 3 iron spikes, the only iron crafting found on any structure in Sulander. This gave the prison a menacing tone, and due to the size of the tower, was the first thing travelers saw when approaching from the west. It was on top of this tower that executions were held and sacrifices were made, like a pedestal for the gods. The second tower, by stark contrast, was found in the eastern side of the city within the second ring. Inside this tower was the college, which was broken up into 3 sections. On the first few floors housed the apothecary and gardens. Above them was the great southern library, and on the top floor was the astronomer's study. The College of Sulander was wrapped in vines that gave life to the tower and whispered when the cool southern winds rose. The third and final tower of Sulander was found at the center of the city, completely surrounded by the third ring, with little more than 40 feet between the walls and the base of the tower. This was the Tower of the King. By far the tallest of the towers, unlike the other 2 that had beveled tops, the Tower of the King came to a point that held on it a great silver hawk. The silver hawk faced north, which was always very strange to Aaron, as all the balconies and doorways of all the towers faced south. To have such a shrewd sculpture facing in a direction that hindered all of those entering the city from looking upon its beauty. The only place Aaron knew of to truly behold the craftsmanship of the hawk was a guard outpost on the northern outer wall, for he had spent much time there as a child. Now, having just recently passed his 15th summer, Aaron would often return to the guard post and read his books under the gaze of the Emerald City's silent guardian. Aaron was small for his age, probably due to the sickness he was said to have had when he was an infant. The healers and priests did what they could for him, and for all the fretting his mother did, he reached 15 with little more than an issue of stature. For Aaron, the great city of Sulander was the only home he knew, never having ventured far from its lands. He was of modest upbringing. Though low-born, he was born into the second tier of the city, which offered him far more freedom than those in the first tier. Commoners were often treated better than farmers in the fields and fishermen to the south, but it was no life for them Aaron's father would offer, often enough that it seemed more a prayer offered to the gods than a decree of truth. It was a gray but beautiful morning. A light snow was drifting in the air currents and danced at Aaron's feet. Aaron was of short stature, a little over 5 foot, and not particularly thick of cut. He had wispy brownish blonde hair with green piercing eyes. He was wearing tight brown trousers, brown leather boots, and a loose-cut woolen shirt of a pale cream color that waved in the swirling wind. He ascended the stone steps to the outer wall, careful not to catch the notice of the guards as he did. They wouldn't harm Aaron if they caught him up there, but they would certainly put up a chase, and if caught, disturbing the peace, they would inform his father was the charge. 3 coppers. That was always the fine, the same number of coppers it would cost to buy the lot of them around at the local tavern and in the loosened buckle. It was a scam, Aaron thought, but one his father both loathed and had come to expect when it came to his son. One of the guards, with his back to Aaron, was mounting a case to the other 2. "If the boy was missing before morning, why are we just now hearing about it?" The raised guard post was built into the side of the outer wall. There were wooden stairs that led to a stone platform and a brazier here where the guards now stood. "The boy's mother just now finished telling Padraig," the second guard voiced. "It'd be my guess that if it took old Padraig a bit less than half the morning to finish breaking fast, and if her telling got in the way of that, the boy might as well stay lost," the third chimed in, as he backed away from the fire, rubbing his hands. Aaron couldn't see his face, but based on the tone assumed the man was brandishing one of those half-smiles pinned to the corner of his mouth. Aaron took this opportunity to grab a hold of a short support beam and lift himself up onto it, throwing a knee over and straddling it until his fight with gravity had subsided. From there, he had only to lift himself up to the stone parapet, and he was on the wall. The wall was 3 feet taller than the roof of the guard post, but with the only door and balcony to the south, and a port window facing out to the north, the guard post remained oblivious to anything atop the wall. Aaron made his way about 20 paces from the guard post, out of earshot, and sat himself facing towards the king's tower and up at the city's silent guardian. A light snow was draped like a shawl over the bird's wings, and every so often the pile would slide, giving those below a quick white shower. "I bet from up there you can see well over the Suderds to the lands beyond," Aaron thought. "If I lived in the great tower, I would spend each morning surveying the mountains until I could draw them from memory." From where he sat now, he could only see the closest mountains, and a few peaks that shone between them. He knew from his studies that there was a great lake that was found in the center of the Suderds. Many of the traveling merchants spoke of its beauty with reverence, but in his 15 years of life, Aaron had never left the lands of the great Southern King. It wasn't that Aaron was not able to venture out of the lands to the north, or that he would be in any trouble for doing so. After all, he was a man, and having read every book on the subject of local vegetation and animals might even be considered knowledgeable. He just never had a reason to leave. Here in Sulander, he had his books. For where other children, growing up, found excitement in adventuring into forbidden districts or harassing the guards, especially Padraig, Aaron reveled in reading about recorded events and studying his books and recipes. Aaron wielded his imagination as other children wielded their hands. Aaron was not a coward, though, and he had never backed away from a fight, regardless of the consequences. He just found a pleasure in studying what was and imagining what could be. His mother loved this about him, almost as much as his father loathed it. It was just before noon when Aaron descended the wall. He moved gracefully down the supports until his feet were once again firmly planted on the dirt. He slipped by the guard post and made his way east to the archway into the second tier. A tightly bundled guard was standing with his arms crossed and his spear, an iron-tipped 8-foot pole, resting on the gate controls behind him. "Business," he barked. "Returning home." Aaron tried to mirror the guard's tone. "Name?" The guard hadn't noticed. "Aaron, son of Veritas." He looked up at the guard, who seemed to study his face. "Just returning home," Aaron said again. "Move on, boy. Don't keep your father waiting." With that, Aaron shuffled past the guard and picked up his pace as he traveled through the courtyard. As he ran, Aaron could smell the aroma of sweet cakes and meat pies from Anu's bakery. The smell was so strong that by the time he made it to his house, he found his mouth was watering and his mind was all a race, with thoughts of a table piled high with meat pies, so high it would take his sister and him a fortnight to finish them all. His house was a 2-story building, with his back facing the inner wall, with less than 2 feet between the two. All the windows faced the street to the front, and it bordered the houses on the left and right by sharing its outer wall with them. The sewer channel ran right in front of their homes, and a walkway had been fashioned out of 3 planks that led to their front door. His mother had painted their family crest on the door in black and gold, 2 outward-facing boots and a cobbler's block in the center. His father had many times tried to teach Aaron the family trade, hoping to entice him into taking over the shop. But Aaron had no mind for leather work and resoling. He found himself daydreaming when left to his tasks, and thinking on his books and recipes. When he was 8, he met a young girl of 11, a handmaiden from the college. They made quick friends and spent much of their time together. They were too young for the excitement that young boys and girls often feel towards one another, and instead shared relations of a different kind. They confided in each other, regularly trading thoughts and secrets. Her name was Bora, daughter of a foreign spice merchant who had often traveled south to Sulander to trade. He took young Bora on all his expeditions, for she loved to see new lands and meet new people. On his last voyage, they had tried to pull through the storm that had risen quickly on the Vestur coastline, and the ship ran aground on a rock a mile out from land. Cargo and crew were excised from the ship, and the ripping tides carried much of them out to sea. Little Bora was found the next afternoon holding on to some floating debris. Her father could not be found. The trader and lord of the estate found just west of Sulander had been promised her father's next shipment, and with nothing to show for his investment, had taken Bora and what cargo he could find as recompense. He was a brute of a man, foreign and portly, with milky skin and a twisted nose and a protruding brow, named Toussaint. He contemplated selling her to the highest bidder, and having been given fine offers from the brothels in the great city, had his mind mostly made up. One of the delegates from the college, an old alchemist by the name of Ehrman, had come down from the college to acquire goods promised him by Toussaint. Having nothing to show the old alchemist, he traded the girl without charge in order to avoid besmirching his name as an honest man of trade. Bora had been taken to the College of Sulander, washed and clothed. There they taught her to read and pen. When Aaron had met her some years later, she was already a brilliant reader and could recall many things previously read simply from memory. As a kindness, and having nothing else to offer her young friend, she taught Aaron the letters, and later loaned him some books, basic books and recipes. When his father saw that he could read at such a young age, he struck a bargain with his son. Instead of wages for his efforts, he would get his son one book for each name day, and in return, Aaron worked every afternoon in his father's stand in the Western Market. Aaron would work for hours in his father's trade, while in a constant state of twilight. He would imagine he was one of the famous heroes from the songs or a great writer of the books he loved so, writing of a powerful Naduri or one of the ancient elves from the wood. Maybe somewhere in his fantastic travels a great journey awaited him. Somewhere over the Sudurds to the north, he would speculate, as the hot rubber was coming to a boil. He would dream of the companions that he would accompany him on his adventure, while spreading the rubber on soiled leather. He would think up words for songs that would be sung, and when he returned home, he would dream of the narrow misses and hearty fights he would surely come upon in his travels. Aaron had developed a mind for adventure, not for cobbling. That night, while his family slept, he laid awake fingering the straw that had pushed its way out of the sackcloth of his bed. Something buried in his mind was giving off a dull irritation, something he was disturbed by, and it kept him from sleep. It was the conversation the guards had been having when he snuck by their post earlier that morning. The boy that had gone missing and his worried mother took shape in his sleepless mind. Aaron imagined his own mother under duress. Had he been the one to go missing? He had seen his mother become irate a few years back when his little sister Mara had disappeared. His mother had wept and moaned, "She's gone, probably trampled underfoot by a passing patrol or lost in the outer district to be sold to a whorehouse." Aaron was sure she was fine and tried to console his mother, but to no avail. In the end, it was he who had been the one to find her, playing in a mud puddle between their house and the wall. And when he turned the corner, he saw her covered head to toe in brown muck. She noticed him and gave a grin of white teeth. Aaron chuckled quietly to himself on remembering the event and how his mother looked when he marched Mara through the front door. Aaron rolled over and readjusted, knocking against the wooden coat stand that clanked against the wall. This sent a stir through the room. When his family had finally subsided, he resumed his train of thought. It was a cool night for so early in autumn. If that poor boy was lost outside the walls and still alone among the living, this would be a harsh night for him indeed. Maybe he was hunkered down in a ditch to keep the wind from biting at his face, or he might have had luck to find an old hunting shack or even an overturned cart. Aaron wondered how old the boy was, how he had come to be outside the walls, and if he would have some stories to tell when the guards found him. Aaron wondered if the guards would find him. They had a habit of informing the town criers of all they were doing to help the people of Zoolander, yet, for all the criers in the city, Aaron could only remember twice that the guards succeeded in their duties. Once, they had recovered the goods of a merchant that had been reported stolen. After 3 days of scouring the city, the goods were found outside the southern gate in some muck, probably having fell from the transport carriage. The only other time he could remember the guards' boasting coming to fruition was the murder of a vagrant in the outer district. The murderer was found less than a day later in the loosened buckle, bragging of his victorious outcome of a tussle in the streets. He was impaled on the prison spire. Half the city turned out for the viewing. This boy Aaron thought. Maybe he was like the bundle of goods, just waiting outside the walls for daybreak, whereupon he would sashay through the southern gates as merrily as if he was returning from a stroll on the bay. A gust of sharp wind blew through the gap under the door and stung Aaron's face, causing him to wince. No, he thought. If that boy was outside the gate on a night like this, all of hell's army could not stop him from pounding on the gate so hard that the whole 1st Battalion would descend from the King's Tower. In the morning, Aaron thought, I shall return to my perch over the northern wall and scan the hills in the base of the Sudurds for the boy, and if that fails, I will leave the city and find him on my own. With that thought, he pulled the quilted blanket high over his head and fell asleep.